I forget the intro. What was I gonna go for? Okay.
Phillies
Let's go.
stink.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Philly Sports Now, Philly Fan Podcast. My name is Zach. With me is Andrew, and we're back to talk all things Philly sports. Now, yes, that is correct. The Phillies do, in fact, stink, and we have the Phillies just laying just the biggest bleeping egg. It's a little too early to curse in the podcast. It's also a little too early in general. So I am a gross looking monster. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you subscribe and hit the like button and comment how gross do you think I look. But regardless, the Phillies lost the NLDS to the New York Mets. The Eagles go and win 4 points over the Cleveland Browns. I called that, by the way, exactly 4 points. I had actually recorded a podcast for this week, and it was if I do say so myself, pretty darn good half-hour long podcast. That was the audio got deleted, so it just doesn't exist. You're never gonna hear it, and I couldn't do it again. The Eagles capable of winning, not by much. I think we're gonna have to start with the Phillies because that is the thing Andrew and I have to talk about. The Phillies go and lose the NLDS, and there's so many stories coming out of this at this point. There's so much to talk about. I did my own research right after the game because that's how I cope. I'm looking at salaries, I'm looking at like how long people are, and then Rob Thompson goes and gets extended before the postseason post press conference. The series was bad. And at no point past Schwarber's home run did I think we were going to win that series. I had hope we could pull it off. I wanted them to win that series. But the other than Schwarber hitting the leadoff home run, first at bat for the Phillies in that first game, never really thought it was going to happen. The second game where we go and win, it's kind of more of a rallying cry. And you're like, all right, they're waking up. We're waking up. Let's get this going, right? Well, you got to see at least one more good game to get that belief going. And games 3 and 4 just did not have it. I mean, we were swept in New York. So clearly, the starting pitching was amazing. Starting pitching for the Phillies was easily the best thing about that series. You have Wheeler going just unbelievable. I believe it was 7 innings, 30 swings and misses, uh, 8 strikeouts, 7 strikeouts, something like that. You have Aaron Nola going very similarly, I believe, 6 innings, maybe a little more. And I don't remember how many strikeouts, but he did great. Nola did great. He did exactly what you needed him to do, as did as did Ranger Suarez in game 4. I don't think enough people are giving Ranger enough credit. You didn't expect an Aaron Nola or a Zach Wheeler start of a game with Ranger, but he goes out there and he does what you need him to do. I think he went 5 innings and a heck of a lot of strikeouts. I can't remember the number, but he did really well, and he pulled his weight, and that's what the starting lineup pitching was phenomenal during the postseason, and I give my hats off to them. I would make absolutely no changes going into next season with the starting pitching. The bullpen, as well as any signs of offense, was horrible. It was non-existent. Um, there is so it's just so hard to like talk about until like you find like your rhythm. But no one performed. You have a handful of players who performed offensively. Harper, Castellanos. Can't think of anyone else who performed well, but I can give you two names who didn't perform well. My first on the list, and I cannot get over it. And haters gonna hate, but JT Realmuto, dude, 0 hits, zero, nothing. He didn't get a lick of anything. All he did was swing at air, and it was abysmal. And I get it. He's the catcher. The catcher is one of the most important defensive positions on the field. But when JT goes through the whole song and dance 3 years ago, whatever it was, about sign JT, and we as the fans are like, yeah, sign JT. He's worth it. He's worth it. He's worth it. This is a big, big series for him to go swing and missing every freaking thing. It's just you can't do that. You can't do that. And he has 1 year left on his contract. And I mean, we're not going to trade him for sure, but Other than winning a World Series next year, I don't see any reason you re-sign him. I just don't think it's worth it. I think we have to move on. And that brings me to my point of which everyone should be making, whether everyone is or not, is you have to shake this team up. You can't do the same exact thing and expect different results. The same exact thing has regressed every year. We've gone from the World Series to the NLCS to the NLDS. Now, you can argue a bit of a plateau because in the regular season, we improved, right? The regular season, you go and you win the National League East pennant for the first time in 12 years, 13 years, something like that. That's great. That's a huge momentum thing. However, Moneyball likes to remind us of the truth in sports. Unless you win the last game of the season, nobody gives a shit. Phillies didn't win, folks. They go and they lose to the New York Mets in a disgraceful manner, to be honest, against your one of your division rivals, against the people that don't shut the fuck up online, the goddamn New York Mets. I mean, what an absurd thing. They're getting handled pretty well right now by the Los Angeles Dodgers because the Dodgers know not to swing at a ball that's 4 feet past the home plate. It was absurd watching people like Trey Turner and Schwarber go to swing at those long balls, man, that were just so out there and just so pathetic to see them try and swing at. And that's why we lost the game. We lost the game because the Mets couldn't throw it in the strike zone, but the Phillies sure did swing it regardless. And it was bad. And we didn't deserve to win that series, in fact. The Phillies did not deserve to win that series because they were not the better team in that series. And I give credit, I think Castellanos had the quote where he said the Mets were the better team in the series, but they're not a better team. That's a solid quote. And Casty performed this series, so I can't be mad at Casty. I hope he retires a Philly. As mad as I am at everyone right now, like he's certainly not on my shit list. Um, I have a lot more to say. I'm certainly not happy with the Rob Thompson sign in. We can get into that at some point, but I've talked a lot. This is my second time trying to talk about it with the failed recording from a week ago. So I'm going to throw the ball over to Andrew. Hopefully he doesn't swing and miss. But Andrew, how you feeling after the NLES, man?
Yeah, I think you look at it as, like you said, the starting pitching was fine. You had two hitters that came and performed. Schwarber had two hits that came in game one and then didn't have another hit the series. You mentioned it. JT doesn't have a hit. I think Alec Bohm had one hit. Trey Turner had two hits. Stott had two hits. I mean, nobody did anything in the series outside Castellanos and Harper. Um, and it's funny, everyone's still mad at Castellanos, but really he just had one bad month in the year. So I'd absolutely bring him back. Um, the bullpen, I mean, yeah, it came out of nowhere. I mean, they built this bullpen in the offseason. They built it in a very good way. They performed the entire regular season. It statistically was one of the best bullpens in the MLB the entire season. And I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what happened to him. I don't know if the moment got to him. I don't know if the Mets just saw him well for some reason. But yeah, no, it was a surprise. I mean, nobody saw it coming. I mean, Jeff Hoffman came into the postseason with barely I think it was just below a 2 ERA. He was an all-star for a reason. He was one of the better relievers, and then he came out and did terrible in that game four, and I think he blew game one as well. So unfortunately, yeah, your guys that helped carry you all year didn't come into the playoffs, and that's where it's all said and done. But I mean, we can pick apart the offense, but for me, I look more toward the bullpen. I'm not saying the offense is great. I'm not making excuses for the offense. I'm just saying if I was to pinpoint my first part on why you lost the series, I go to the bullpen because in the end, at game one, I get it was only 1-0, but you blew a 1-0 lead. And for a bullpen in the postseason with the guys you build it with, it doesn't matter if it's a 10-9 game or a 1-0 game. A one-run game is a one-run game, and your job is to go in there and get the final final 6 outs of that game after your starting pitcher went 7 shutout innings. They couldn't get 6 outs. Same thing with game five, or sorry, not game five, game four. Rangers Swarers battles, gets out of a couple jams in that spot, and then they come in again. Same thing. Your job is to come in and protect the lead that the starting pitcher and even though it's a run, that the offense scratched out the run and gave them. And their job was to come in and get the final outs, and they failed to do it in 2 games. You do your job and get those 2 games. That's a series right there. You're winning 3-1. So yeah, I'm not making excuses for the offense. The offense was terrible. All the chasing as well. I agree with you. But if I was to pinpoint my first issue, it's the bullpen. And again, it's a shame because they threw well all regular season. So I didn't see it coming from the bullpen. I think the offense came to no surprise for a lot of people just because it happened the last two postseasons. It happened in September a little bit before the playoffs. You saw them chasing a lot and kind of out of rhythm. So I think that was almost expected a little bit that you had to try to survive that series and get through it and see if you can get back into a rhythm. And the bullpen wasn't able to do that for us.
Yeah, I have here. I want to get more into the offense of it because I think there is a lot to say there. Because this team was built on, well, not only home runs. Like I'm not trying to go up that tree right now, but this team was also built on being a 12-run team, right? So you have to blame the offense to an extent because you weren't scoring at all, really. Like you said, one run in the first game. Now, the thing I will say to your point that I agree with is the fact that the bullpen just felt like they came out of nowhere. Their lack of showing up came out of nowhere, right? Like you said, but and in an extent, right? Like going and winning game one by 1 point. That's old school baseball, you know. Like that's how baseball was. It was a defensive game for most of our lifetimes. It feels like, but like that is old school baseball. Is to go out and just defensively hold the ground, and if you get one run, you did two runs. That's what you got. You go with that. But yeah, I mean they let the Mets run all over them. You essentially you saw Hoffman or Strom go in, especially after game one, and you're like, it's over. It's over. Like, and I think it was the Nola game where one of them went in with the bases loaded because that's the situation Nola kind of got, or I maybe it was two men on base. And you knew they were going to score at least two runs, if not more, and I think they scored three or four. And it's the bullpen did not show up. You're 100% correct. I think it is a sound argument for what one of these issues is. But again, offensively, I have here like the salaries. I'm a big salaries guy. I don't care. I don't care about Middleton's money because that's not my money. What I do care about is when you're paid to do a job and you don't do that job, right? So the two people I said at the top, Harper and Castellanos. Harper batted 333. Castellanos bat 412. Like phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. They did great. They did all they could do, really. I think the Harper. I was mad at him and I blamed. I don't remember which game it was. Andrew, you can correct me. The one game Harper goes up, there's no outs, and Schwarber and Trey both got walked. And Harper goes and he swings right out, like just nothing. And I definitely blamed him a lot for playing stupid in that moment. Now, again, the stats will say Harper played phenomenally this series, which he did. And it's hard to say, well, Harper messed up in that one spot, so it's his fault. However, when it's your superstar, like that's the moment, right? Like we've talked about before on this podcast how mentally it must be draining for Harper because he doesn't have a World Series and all this bullshit, right? Blah blah blah. But also when Harper goes and makes that critical mistake that could cost you the like again, I'm not telling him he needs to get on base. I'm not telling him he needs to hit an RBI, but when there's no outs, you could do fuck all to get Schwarber to third base. That's all you needed to do in that situation, and everyone would have been like, "Yep, he did absolutely the minimum." And instead, he goes and strikes out, and it's just that was a
I,
huge miss. And look again, I look. I'm not saying get rid of Harper. I'm not blaming the series on Harper, but when your superstar makes that mistake, that's something he has to figure out. Like you can't make that mistake. Go ahead. I know it's on your tongue.
no, I think that also stems from how bad the rest of the offense was. Because
Yes,
Harper was seeing the ball fine and he was walking a lot during that series too. But when you have nobody else performing and nobody else hitting guys in, that causes other guys to press. And a guy like your superstar who feels like he has to do everything, he's going to go to try out and do everything for that big hit in that spot. Because, I mean, let's face it, the way this team was hitting, I mean, getting a guy to third really might have not done much without
you're
Alec Bohm behind him. And I know it sounds like excuses, but no, that's why it's important to have guys hit behind superstars. And that's why in game two, it seemed like at the time it was so big when they did walk Harper and Castellanos came through. But if I remember correctly, I'm pretty sure in game three, when they went back to Bohm, they flipped Bohm back to the four spot. So Bohm was sitting behind Harper. Um, so there, I mean, with the way he's struggling, who knows what Bohm does? And I think that's part of the problem. And these guys started pressing, um, and trying to do too much at times. And I think
The pressure
that
definitely
was
got to him.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and they tried to do too much, and it really came back to hurt him. But I don't know. It's going to be an interesting offseason.
Now, the two people, it's funny. People did worse than these people. Like I said, JT hitting zero. Unacceptable. It's just unacceptable. Hayes hitting zero as well. I think he was only starting in one rotation, if I remember correctly. But you trade for Hayes at the deadline. He's a $6 million a year starter. Like he's supposed to be a big guy. I think Baltimore was pretty happy to get rid of him because clearly he didn't show up in this series. He did nothing for us in the postseason. Um, but that being said, my two like I don't even know what to call it because I guess just disappointments. Because again, I'm not sitting here trade them, but you have to point it out. And it's Trey Turner just not doing enough, man. He's got the superstar contract. He's coming in and he bats 200. Got walked, I guess. He didn't do enough. He did not do enough. And sometimes he played smart at the plate, but he just I mean, he wasn't doing it. He was not performing well. And I'm so tired of the like what is going on with Trey Turner's head. And to that extent, we got to talk about Bohm. Absolutely love Bohm. 100% love Bohm, and I don't blame this series on him because I think his injury is just too much for him. He shouldn't have been out there. However, that being said, he also seems to have a case of the yips to some extent. And that's concerning. And I think the conversation comes out. Like I said earlier, you're gonna have to change up this lineup. You can't just let the guys be the guys another year. Nothing's gonna change. That's not how there's no accountability in this clubhouse. There isn't. Otherwise, you would have saw some kind of big change. And we didn't. So I think when it comes down to it, the people I think are gonna leave this offseason or until the next trade deadline, but I'd assume the offseason, I think Marsh and Bohm are gone. Um, I want to keep Bohm, to be honest. I think he's injured. I think he wasn't able to give his all, and I just think it's a shame to see him go. On the counterpoint, not only did he not do well in the postseason, I think he's lost his Philly mojo, dude. I think he likes it here, but I think the pressure's just getting to him too much, and it's a shame. And I hate to say that, but I think he's gonna go somewhere else and be another all-star. Like I think he just needs a new place. And I don't want to see him go, but I just feel like it might be the best for his career. Uh Marsh is gone. Marsh is absolutely gone. I love that dirt ball, but he's not adding anything. Postseason, he batted 77. Oh, 77 in the postseason, dude. Like that was unacceptable. Your outfielder, he's here on a dime. He's got a $700,000 contract. That's nothing. But he can't be batting that low, dude. He's got to be showing up, and he didn't show up. He wasn't doing anything. Rojas actually did pretty darn well in this series. He batted 200, and I was like, he showed up when he needed to. Rojas was at the plate and wasn't
Nah,
necessarily a strikeout. What?
nah, I disagree on Rojas.
I see. I
He had
think
big spot. He
Rojas
had
did
big
enough.
spots in the fifth inning where he had to get on. He had to move guys over. He didn't do it. Nah.
I think Rojas did enough
I
to solidify his defensive needs, his offense. Like I've also seen enough growth in Rojas that I think he's going to keep doing well. I think Marsh is not. I think Marsh is plateaued. I think he's not doing anything, and I think you have to get rid of him. You have to replace him with someone more more performing. And I don't know, maybe you work Hayes into this roster in the offseason and he's taking Marsh's place permanently. But I think Hayes is kind of a liability right now, so I don't know where I stand on that position. Um, but yeah, Andrew, I guess I'm just going through it all. Again, I haven't even talked about Thompson, but like, yeah, when it comes down to it, Turner, Bohm, and Marsh are my biggest disappointments. Uh, Stott didn't do well, but he had a big game too, and then he was taken out. Uh, yeah, I don't know, man. I'm pissed. These guys sucked. They sucked. They sucked. The whole thing sucked, and it just I'm over it. We have to move on because that's what we have to do. Because the series is over, the season is over, and now we're watching them try to get a New York Subway series, and I just don't give a shit. I just don't give a shit, and I don't think the right moves are going to be made in the offseason that need to be made.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot there. I mean, there's a lot of guys that didn't perform. I think it's time to move on from Bohm. The guy's 28 years old. He's not going to get out of his own head.
Exactly.
Um, it's quite ridiculous to see a guy go out there and every time he gets out, he acts like he just made the biggest mistake ever. I mean, the amount of helmets you've seen him break throughout the season. Um, it's just it kills the vibe of the team. And I hate to use that word because I mean I think it's overused a little bit with this team, but this team did live off fives, obviously. Um, I think I mean I like Bohm. I like the story. He overcame the defensive struggles early. The fans got behind him, after he kind of admitted to what he said and everything. And it's a shame to see it go down this road. I also hated his post game conference after the game when they were asking him, and he said, "This is the type of baseball player I am. I'm not going to change." So you know what? If you're not going to change, then I think it's time to move on because I think it was a clear issue with this team, the way he presented himself, the way he carried himself, and I think that's why you saw him benched in game two was not because of his play. I believe Thompson in that case. I think it was to try to provide a spark because of his demeanor on the field. And it's funny that was the one game you won. You could argue why after a win, why did you switch back the lineup? You scored 7 runs and won the game.
It's a great
Um,
argument, Andrew. It's a great
um,
argument. I wonder who we should be talking about in that situation.
but
Probably the manager.
so I think Bone there is the spot. I mean, press conferences to press conferences. If you believe anything Dave Dombrowski said,
Nope.
I had a chance to watch that. It sounds like he said the infield's going to be the same. The outfield's where they're making changes. Um, Based off what Dave was saying, I'm going to say Rojas is gone. Um,
Which is fine. I
and
don't like. I don't care. I just don't blame
yeah,
Rojas for this series. But
well, I mean, I don't blame any one player for the series. It was the whole team
eh,
outside Harper and Castellanos, and the starting pitcher. I mean, again, you can point to Schwarber, you can point to Turner, you can point to Bohm, you can point to JT, you can point to Stott.
and
I
I
mean,
do.
that's what I'm saying. Like you can't blame it on one guy. I mean, it was the whole team.
Yeah, but it
Game
was.
one,
You're right. You're absolutely right.
game
None of
one
them
was
got a hit.
Strom. Game two was Hoffman. In the bullpen, like he's not even one bullpen guy. Because yeah, Strom was the one that blew game two. Hoffman was game four. So yeah, I think for me personally, if I had to move on from one of the guys, I think it is you look at Bone. Um, He's 28. You might be able to, like you said, convince the team needs to change the scenery, try to get his attitude
He's an
right.
all-star, Billy.
And yeah, and he was. He actually was. Um, but so I don't know. I'm curious where this offseason goes. It'll be a little bit obviously before we know. We got probably a month or 3 weeks left of baseball. Before we dive into the full offseason and start fully hearing some rumors. Um, but yeah, I think this team has some work to do this offseason, but I also don't think it's as far away as people think. I think there's a lot of obviously reactions to the way it ended. So I think this team isn't people are acting like, that there's no future with this team and we got nothing going into next year. It's not nearly that bad.
Yeah, I don't think
Um,
that's fair. I don't think like people saying that is it's look, I said it's all doom and gloom, and I don't think we have nothing going into next season. I think if you don't change this roster at all, we're another playoff playing team. Like it's just a matter of I think we have the biggest thing is it's very Eagles parallel, right? No one knew the tush push. We went to the Super Bowl. Eagles went to the Super Bowl and lost. Now everyone knows how to handle the tush push.
No,
Phillies had a home run hitting club, and no one knew how to handle it in 2022. We went to the World Series, lost the World Series. Now people know how to handle it. You throw balls, they're going to swing at it. You strike them out every time. It's there needs to be not only accountability but discipline at the plate is what it comes down to. And I think you are 100% correct. I think you have to shake up the lineup, getting rid of Marsh, getting rid of Bohm, even though you just said probably not getting rid of Bohm. Um, but like I think you need to change up the lineup to hopefully get like, different mentality through the team. Um, I don't know. There's much more to talk about. We're running low on time, so I'm gonna move us over. But we'll talk more. We'll talk more Phillies postseason Blues coming up. Don't you worry. Uh, we'll also do some quick, real quick. I'm talking 30 seconds or less. Flyers, Mitchkov scored his first goal. Great. And look, let's get some hype going for the Flyers. We'll get there. Sixers, Paul George got hurt already. Bone bruise, I believe, is what it was. So he'll probably be out like a month. I mean, it's early season, so there's no reason to stress that right now. Did someone else get hurt too? Am I making that up?
no. Rookie McCain took a very hard fall. Had to go to the hospital. He got released. I can't remember what the injury was, like the diagnosis was from there, but he was released and he's resting at home. So
Okay.
I think he's missing about 2 weeks. But yeah, so our rookie um got hard fall and hit his head, but they said he didn't get a concussion.
Gotcha. Well, as we wrap up here, we're going to do our second main focus of the day, and that's the Eagles winning 2016 4-point win over the Cleveland Browns. Now, Eagles were favored 10 points going into this game. Didn't buy that for a second. I'm sorry for yelling, but if you bought a 10-point spread, you're an idiot. Go home. Call 1-800 gambling. That's a dumb play. The Eagles were never going to win by 10 points, and this game just showed why. It was a not great game. And Andrew, I don't know if you're I don't know where you are. Andrew and I have both been on the same page regarding Nick Sirianni this whole time, but this game I think is what flipped my switch. I mean, you had such a bad game against such a bad team, and him going off on the fans. I don't care if they were Browns fans, but him going off like that at the end of the game, I'm just his press conference interview was weird. I don't think the kids thing is as big a deal as people are making it out to be because he always
None of
brings
it
his,
is.
he always brings his kids to the home press conference games, like always. So like him bringing them to that press conference wasn't really like surprising. Uh, I didn't watch it because he's an idiot at this point, and I'm like, I just didn't need to watch it. And I actually missed a lot of the game. I had to watch recaps, so I'm giving Andrew the mic here as we wrap up and kind of get your main points on the game. I'll give you what I saw off the highlights and the Nick Sirianni stuff, but Andrew, take it away.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of continued overreaction. This game scores closer than what it should have been. People always want to blame the coaches because players never do anything wrong. Um, and if your players perform and you either kick the field goal or you don't get a blocked field goal, ran back for a touchdown, a fluke play that doesn't happen often, you're looking at a 20-9 game. The defense didn't allow a touchdown. They looked a lot better, much improved out of the break. They were tackling very well, had 5 sacks, 5 tackles for a loss. So they played very well. Jalen Hurts played against the blitz very well. His first game of the season, he didn't have a turnover. He threw for 2 touchdowns, 264 yards. Struggled a little bit to start the game, but after the first drive, he got going. Um, AJ Brown comes back from injury. He has 116 yards. Devontae Smith has 64 yards. Both those guys get touchdowns. You lose Dallas Goedert first play of the game. And Grant Calcaterra comes in, steps in at tight end, gets 67 yards on 4 catches. So I actually took a lot of positives away from this game, unlike a lot of people, because people are just looking at the score. And they just look at the score, and I don't think the score tells the whole story of this game. Because again, I think Your defense did very, very well in this game. Your offense had very good moments. Obviously, yeah, it'd be nice to get that first touchdown to start the drive. That's the biggest issue here is you continue to fail to score in the first quarter. But again, I thought after that quarter, this team really got into a groove and played fairly well. I don't think the score tells the whole story. And I think there's a lot of overreaction coming out of this game.
My takeaway is I think the two things is the no scoring in the first quarter is bad. Like it's we are almost halfway through the season. My hair is almost halfway to the moon. Um, you can't keep we as fans have nothing to defend at this point. Like how are we not scoring in the first quarter is a big takeaway. It's we just look bad. Look, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I watched the highlights. I've watched the other games. We just looked bad. And against the Cleveland Browns, who is arguably the worst team in the NFL right now. And look, I think we have a chance to win the division. So there's always a playoff hope right there because I think we are not like down and out by any means. But I don't watch this team and think they can make a run. I think this is a first round exit, my expectations have been set as such. And I think that the players do hold a lot of accountability to that. And I think the main one being Jalen Hurts is doing his own thing. I think there was a clip out there that I saw that's clearly showing him changing the play or something
Well, that's
after.
normal.
Yeah,
Kind of
but like
quarterbacks do that.
my point is, I think Hertz doesn't trust his play calling. Whether it's Sirianni, it's got to be Sirianni, right? Because you can't say it's Kellen Moore because it's the same thing he was doing last season with a different offensive coordinator. So it's got to be Sirianni. He's not agreeing with. So now we're gonna have the conversation at some point. Do you go with Hertz or do you go with Sirianni? And I gotta go with Hertz in this situation. This isn't Doug versus Wentz. I would have went with Doug because he was the one that won the Super Bowl. Wentz got you there, all the blessings to him, but like didn't win it. Um, you should have went with Doug in that situation, right? But you didn't. In this situation, I I think you got to go with a Hurts. And if Hurts isn't trusting your coach, I think then you have to decide to move on from that coach. And that's again, I like Sirianni. I like his thing. I think he's an idiot and he's a sucker and I love it. I think he's very Philly, right? He's got that Italian energy, the Italian anger problems, and I think he's a funny guy. But it's funny when you're winning and we're barely winning is what's happening right now. And you're doing that shit at home with the stand stuff. And I'll be the first to admit it. I found on Reddit a supposed person who claims to be the one who was talking to Sirianni, and it wasn't talking shit. They were like just yelling at each other, excited kind of a thing. They were like, "Run the ball." He's like, "I will run the ball," and then he's like, "I told you I'd run the ball. We won." Blah blah blah. And I can see why Sirianni like thinks it's fun and good because he was yelling good things in his head, but you need to keep. You've you've passed your grace period is my best way to say it. Like you're in the hot seat. And this feels like what you said with Alec Boehm, like he is the way he is. Okay. If you are the way you are and you think you're gonna stay that way, you need to win more. And I don't just mean wins in the win column, but win more. Like score in the fucking first quarter. It's a big deal that we're not scoring in the
It's
first
not though.
quarter.
Like
It is. It is because it's showing that you are you need to see the game to figure out what's going on, and then you're just trying to keep your head above the water. You're not actually getting ahead.
we're 5 games into the season. Like a lot can change. Like this is the whole point of the beginning of the year. You look at the Chiefs last year. I mean, everyone was freaking out. Oh, the Chiefs are the same team. Blah 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 blah, and they went on to win the Super Bowl. The Eagles went
There's a
10.
big difference
No, there's
between the
not. The
Super Bowl
Eagles.
winning Chiefs and the Eagles,
They're
who are having the same offensive problems as they did last year during the decline.
no. My point is you're 5 games in the year. That doesn't define the season. Um, this team and like the Knicks year, who cares? He's been chirping. He's been doing this his entire career. This is not the first time he's yelled at fans. This is not the first time he's brought his kids to the press conference.
And
He won a
I
game.
agree. I agree, but it's different when you're not winning.
He is
Is
winning. They won the game. And he's
Or,
3-2. He wins
dude,
66% of his
Deshaun
games.
Watson can't throw a ball at a barn door. He can't
And they
hit the
didn't let
side of a
Deshaun Watson score
barn.
a touchdown. Why are we acting like Deshaun Watson went out there and threw for 350 yards against the Eagles? He didn't. He threw for 168 yards and didn't have a touchdown.
Look, I get it. I agree. People are overreacting. The press conference thing doesn't bother me as much because that's just who he is. He's always brought his kids to the press conference. I think it's stupid we're making a show of that now. Like, that's just people looking for something to fire him for. It's just not there. That's not it. The fans thing bothers me. I think that's dumb to what looks like chirping. It apparently wasn't. It might not have been. He's apologized, blah, blah, blah. I don't care. Um, I just think he's not winning enough is the best way to put it. The team
Why do you
isn't winning
care?
enough
Why do you care if they win by 5 points or if they win by 15 points? What's
because
the
it
difference between
matters against the team you're playing.
it?
Because
Doesn't.
if you
Why does it
lose,
matter?
look, because I will tell you.
So
Because
if the
if you
Browns
can
didn't
I finish?
if the
Can I
Browns
finish?
didn't block if the Browns didn't block the field when we won this game 20-9, is that really big difference to you?
Yes, yes. Look.
Why? The offense didn't score in the first quarter.
The my God. If you can't beat the Browns by more than 10 points, you're not going to go win in the playoffs.
That's not true.
Really? Really? Well, folks, sorry we got cut off there, but we're going to have to end it today. Thank you so much for listening to Philly Sports Now, Philly Fan Podcast. Obviously, you can tell Andrew and I are differing on the sides. I'm currently leaning more towards general Philadelphia hate for Nick Sirianni, unfortunately, whereas Andrew is still back in the horse entirely. We'll see essentially what plays out. This coming weekend, we take on the New York Giants. And let me actually do a live betting analysis here for you. Let's see what the favorites here are, because this is being talked about as a big revenge game for Barkley going back into New York. I don't think enough people are talking about, although I haven't listened to anything today, which is Friday the 18th. I don't think enough people are talking about the fact that it's a Philadelphia, the city, revenge over New York, the city, between the New York Knicks last year and between the New York Mets and what they just did. I know those are kind of crossing streams. Giants usually more affiliated with Yankees fans. Mets fans usually more affiliated with Jets fans. But fuck New York and all, the city in its whole, right? Like, so let's take a look. Eagles definitely favored at -3 against the Giants, which is a good thing because the Giants are pretty dog shitty. Sorry, Nate. -3. That's very doable. We could win by 2. I hope not. I actually think we do better this game. I do think the Eagles kind of show up between Nick Sirianni getting in trouble last week and between it being the Barkley revenge game. I think the Eagles kind of handle business this week, surprisingly. I will also say I'm a firm believer, there's my Gargano sniffle, but I'm a firm believer in the fact that when it comes to the division going into each season, I pretty much always say we're going to split with one team, we're going to split with another team, and we're going to sweep the third team. Usually, I would say split Dallas, split Giants, sweep Washington. However, it's Washington's division to lose, unfortunately. So I definitely think if we're going to sweep any of our division teams in this year, it's going to be the New York Giants. So I'm calling that here. I think we win by 6 or more. I don't have a score, but I'm gonna stick with that. I said we are gonna win by 4 last week off the podcast, where I was right. So might as well throw my I'll stick to that kind of mentality. I think the Eagles win by 6 points. Yeah, I think we handle business. I think Barkley is going to come in, and I think we're going to use him a lot. I think with the revenge factor is huge here. Hopefully Hurts and Sirianni getting on the same page. It's kind of the big thing Andrew was arguing for, is that Sirianni is no more in the hot seat than he usually is. I don't necessarily fully disagree with that. I do actually disagree a little bit because of the fan interaction stuff at the end of the game. Overall, though, he did get the win. They got the win last week. I just don't think it was a pretty win, and I think you needed more over the Browns. I do think you needed a large victory. We haven't had any of those, and we just aren't a good team this year. And I don't have Super Bowl expectations, and I'm not letting that affect my mentality going forward with the season. But as far as just enjoying the game to game, I don't enjoy very much of these games that you feel like you should be winning by a lot. Kind of talked off podcast with Nick about, are they setting Nick Sirianni up to fail? Gunning for that Bill Belichick hiring. Belichick's going to go somewhere next year. Like, he's not going to stay retired. He definitely wants to get that win streak finished to get him the winningest coach in NFL history. And, are they setting Sirianni up to fail? I don't know. I think we just have to watch this play out. It's weird saying you have to watch a whole year play out to see what happens next, but that's where we're at. So I think Eagles go into New York and handle business. I think the Sirianni drama just kind of continues, and we'll deal with it from there. But thank you, everyone, for listening to Philly Sports Now, a Philly fan podcast. You can find us everywhere. Links are in the description below. Again, subscribe on YouTube, The Philly Gamer, if you haven't already. Thank you for listening on Spotify, if that's where you're at. Shout out Narissa for the shout-out on not Spotify. What the hell was that? Instagram. Thank you for the shout out on Instagram. Thank you guys for listening. And as always, go Birds. Good night.
Go!